What does it take to become an authentic leader? And what can you start doing today? All this is what I will share with you in this course. I mean, many of us still live in an old world, believing that leadership has to do with years of experience, with extraordinary motivational skills, and with the emotional intelligence and the stamina of a superhero. You know, let me tell you that we have finally arrived in a new world, luckily. And I mean, we are in the middle of the digital transformation taking place, where leadership is completely newly defined, basically. I mean, this is a unique chance you have today to shape your leadership skills and your leadership style in a way that will help you achieve not only great results with your team and your business in the future, but also will help you to perform much better and to feel more comfortable in your leadership position. Because digital leadership requires authentic leaders, and becoming an authentic leader is not only simple, it is also easy, and we will help you to get equipped and in order to perform best in many different situations. And that's what really good leaders need today. So last year alone, I mean, on this slide, we have again what we heard before, the authentic leadership definition. And I mean, last year alone, more than about 2,200 books, I think that's the number I do recall, 2,200 books on leadership were published. And as long as business is around, we will always continue to pick apart the underlying ingredients of true and excellent leadership. The notion of authenticity goes all the way back to Shakespeare's Hamlet, and there we find the quote, "To thine own self be true." And I guess that's probably the baseline of authenticity, right? So highlighting the importance of authenticity in the context of leadership, let me invite you now to join me on a short journey exploring authentic leadership. As I mentioned earlier, when we talk about excellent leaders, most of us have in mind that these are individuals with great character strength who can remain over a long period of time with constant valued qualities. And typical leaders' attributes that come to our mind are drive, enthusiasm, motivation. But there's a tricky aspect of leadership. Despite all these qualities and strengths that we are looking for in leaders, we also want them to be reflective and well aware of the situation, as we said earlier. So it really comes down to this capacity to match and express core character strength in a way that is optimal to different situations. And this is what we consider authentic leadership. So why is this journey or this topic of relevance for you? Because it covers the number one secret of excellent leaders. Here is the key. Authentic leadership has to do a lot with being conscious, being aware of the situation, being present. So authentic leadership is conscious leadership, and conscious leadership is really the most effective way of tackling the complex challenges we have or we face today in the digital world. In a world where there is so much disruption across industries going on, that it's really about being conscious, being present, being in the moment, realizing what's going on. I mean, on a technological side, we talk about real-time and real-time analytics and real-time data and big data. If we transfer that into a leadership context, we also need to be aware, we need to be present in the moment, in the specific situation, so we can really get the best out of it. And as I said before, the key message here is that you need to remember leadership in a digital context is less about being perfect in the one or the other style, applying one or the other model, behavior, or whatever. No, really good leaders are authentic, and that means they are conscious about the situation, they are present in the moment, they realize what's going on, and they have the ability and the skills to adapt to this specific situation. So authentic leadership is not really defined by a particular style, but by the quality of consciousness and the level of reflective and integrative awareness. I know we had a short definition before, but if we look into the textbooks on authentic leadership, here is the definition that I find covers most of the elements that we should deal with. Authentic leadership is the process that draws from both positive psychological capacities and a highly developed organizational context, which results in both greater self-awareness and self-regulated positive behavior on the part of the leader and the associates, which then fosters positive self-development. So in simple words, that means if we have the social or the emotional skills needed to adapt to different people and situations, and we also have the organizational context, or we also are aware of the organizational context, we are more self-aware, and thus we can have a much better, a much more positive influence on the people around us, and all this obviously will then cause very positive developments. But the question that really remains is, what happens in a typical situation when leaders lack self-awareness? Good question, right? Let me go on to the next slide for you. So leaders who lack self-awareness, they tend to be less adaptable, and they swing towards one of the two positions that you can see in this chart. So authentic leadership is in the middle. That's kind of like the centerpiece, the one that you're aiming for. But then we have a left wing and a right wing. On the left-hand side, we see defiance, and on the right-hand side, we see a compliance. And let me explain this a bit further. To describe a leader in a defiant position, so that means if a leader, excuse me, is not at all self-aware, he tends to, let's say he swings towards the left, which is in this case, in this chart, defiance. To describe a leader in a defiant position is like drawing the picture of a person unconsciously focused on his or her own agenda in a very controlling and decisive style. This person is accompanied by fear of failure, and this person also ignores others' needs. Maybe you have someone in mind who is always trying to push his or her own agenda, who is a control freak, and who wants to decide and check everything, not giving permission until he or she has seen it. I mean, many times these leaders are very much afraid of failing, and they neglect others' needs, but focus only on what brings them forward, what's good for them. So as I mentioned before, leaders who lack self-awareness and who are not authentic leaders at all can also swing in the other directions, which is towards the right-hand side on compliance. A leader on the compliance side can be described as a person lacking spontaneity and having a real fear of abandonment. This leader would typically be very eager to please others, to make everybody happy, and just make sure that everybody's fine and nobody is left out. And then we have in the middle the authentic leader who consciously and constantly balances the need of self and the needs of the others. And he is adaptable, and he or she obviously acts in a very motivating way. Now, some of you might say, well, what's the theoretical or the research underpinnings of this leadership model? Let me very briefly, in a few sentences, explain the theory behind. The authentic leadership model is primarily built on two theories. The one is attachment theory, and the other one is development theory. Again, in simple terms spoken, if we look at the leader, obviously every leader was once again, or was sometime a child. And a child who experiences responsiveness from its parents or primary caretaker is most likely to develop a secure base for exploring the world and forming relationships. But if parents are unresponsive, or they even neglect the needs, the questions, the desires of the child, this child will develop what we call avoidant attachment, where this child is emotionally cut off. And then on the other hand, having an inconsistent response from parents causes a child to establish a more ambivalent attachment, resulting in adults who are always in search for pleasing others. So this is kind of like the theoretical underpinning of this leadership model, where you see in the middle authentic leaders. Those are the ones conscious, they're present, they're in the moment, they are adaptable to the situation. If this is not the case, most leaders swing either to the left in a defiance position, or to the right in an extreme compliant position, because of the experiences they have made in their early childhood. Now, in the next model, in the next module, we will look at the core components of becoming an authentic digital leader.